To discuss the power imbalances affecting women at home and at work during this COVID-19 pandemic, we're joined now by Professor Thenjiwe Meyiwa, a gender studies researcher. A very good evening to you, Prof, and thank you for your time today. Now, I found it quite interesting when looking through some of the work that you've been doing, that you're saying that this COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the discrepancies between men and women in the workplace. And I found it interesting because those who are working are actually working at home and not in their conventional workplaces. Why don't you give us a bit of context about that?
Thanks, Tammy. Indeed, you're spot on. Aside the fact that I do research on gender, I've actually thought that it would be prudent for me to do a short survey to check on the actual voices of women who are working and also who experience the kind of reference that you made to earlier on in your introduction. So what women actually say, although I must upfront declare that the survey does not necessarily reflect the entirety of women, but it is an indication of the experiences and in particular the lived experiences that women go through. What women are telling me, interestingly, is that COVID-19 has brought to them much more stress. Those that are working, for instance, at home, they're actually battling to find a divide between the home space, the public space, and even the workspace, because all these spaces have now become so blurred, leading to them. One woman tells me that, you know what, I just don't understand who I am. Am I a maid? Am I a domestic worker? Am I a teacher? Am I a wife as well as a doctor? Who am I during this time? But also equally, the working hours seem to have stretched beyond what they used to be. My employer would expect me, just because I'm home and I'm easily reachable, to be available 7 a.m. and so shall be the case at 7 p.m. So this is what women tend to be finding themselves, and it seems that COVID-19 has worsened the women's workplace now that these places, which of course we would complain about in the past, seem to have been blurred beyond understanding and imagination.
Well, the truth is, Professor, women who do have husbands or women who do have partners within the household, if the man is working, the man is also pretty much in the same situation in the sense that he himself might be expected to be having 7 a.m. meetings with children running around the house. But how has this particular situation accentuated the division of responsibilities between men and women within the household? And is that now equitably being looked into given the current circumstance?
Much as one will not want to give a blanket response that seems to suggest that all households behave in the same manner, but the sampling indicates that even men who would ordinarily be assisting, like when they come back from work in the afternoons, evening, or at weekends, now that it's COVID-19, they also find themselves to be stretched and want to now concentrate. They take that office mode and stature into the home. And one woman tells me that, I'm telling you, my kids know that Dad should not be disturbed during his Skype meetings. When they need help, be it homeschooling, be it to check on the time for kids to have something to eat, being taken care of. If anything, despite both of us as partners in the household and as parents to the kids who are homebound, they know that the father is not the person to go to, because they've come to understand that he's busy, he's working from home, and children seem to be understanding that. Now, my worry, Tammy, here is that much as we have over time moaned about how culturally we've conscientize both men and women from actually earlier on as boys and girls into these gender dividing roles. We seem to be having this pandemic not only entrenching the traditional, if you will, cultural ways of this is what you expect of a man's role, a woman's role, but it seems like we're creating new behavioral patterns because of the COVID-19.
I'm wondering, Professor, if this is a conversation point between couples, like if women are finding that they are being every woman, ticking all of the above boxes that you've listed, are these conversations that they're having with their husbands or their partners about perhaps a reversal and some sort of a working together within the home and balancing responsibilities of elderly parents and of children, as well as balancing the responsibilities they have with their work?
You know, this being an unprecedented pandemic that's locked everybody at home, I did not get an indication that there's been such conversations, but I've got to say that I did not pose that question. I had a list of questions that I had given them in terms of how are gender roles playing out during this period of lockdown. So, but from the responses that I got to have, I don't have a sense that there's been conversations, or I'm just wondering if there is even time for those conversations, Sam. Because it seems like the workplace that shifted from the brick and mortar of the office on the 17th floor, whatever the floor that's air-conditioned, wherein you at least will possible have some time for tea break, some time to chat with colleagues, some time to say, we're now moving from this room to the next room, everything that is happening in the house. And I'm just wondering if women have, of course, one has got to understand that we're only locked down from the 26th of March or thereabout. It's been a short period of time. It seems like the pace has gone too fast, and there hasn't been time to step back, reflect, and think, how could we handle these things differently? But whatever the case may be there conversations that exist between partners or not, it is clear that the woman is at the end of the stick.
Professor, with the investigations and the research that you did you talk to both men and women?
In terms of the number of people that I spoke to, there were less men who availed themselves to respond to these questions, but of course there were more men. You know, the men that responded to the questions acknowledged the fact that the workplace is getting stretched quite a lot now because of the pandemic, but in terms of statistics, there are less men than women that I got to reach, having to have that disclaimer up front.
And I ask you this because I found it quite interesting when you say that men are sometimes attending their Zoom or Skype meetings in their boxer shorts, very casual, with a drink in their hand, while there's an expectation for women to dress up. Who did this expectation come from? Was it mainly from the women themselves, or is it an expectation that men had on the women?
You know, it varies from one household to the next. My sense is that women could be making this decision because you know that if you dress up, you feel better, and therefore it does somehow take the space of what women told me that, you know, much as I'm home, it is actually supposedly expected to be a much more comfortable space, but I miss the support that I would have otherwise be receiving from co-workers who may be female or male. So one has got to dip into certain reserves to find ways of psychologically, emotionally ready yourself and tell yourself, you know, despite me being at home, I still have work to do. And the least that I could possibly do is to dress up in a manner that's going to assist towards mentally be prepared for me to serve as much as I possibly can. But looking at that, you know, one analyzes to me, and there's this expectation that seems to be put on women, or rather even women putting those expectations on themselves, but because of how society has taught, retaught, and expect us to ingrain these expectations that a woman has got to be presentable. But that as it may be, it does not seem that it's something that is becoming a culture that is imposed on them.